Wow, that was really exciting welcome. Thank you so much, and welcome to the final panel of the day, PR on a Startup Budget. My name is Alyssa Toft. I'm the founder of Quill Cue, which is a company focused on helping people write meaningful handwritten notes to people who've made a difference in their life. I am so excited for our panel today because this is a topic that I'm truly passionate about. Before starting Quill Cue, I didn't have a background in media, I didn't have a background in PR, and it was this really interesting challenge that I was facing about how do I get Quill Cue's name out there? How do I let people know about this? How do I reach out to the media? And I made a lot of embarrassing mistakes, and some in front of the people who are on this panel today, and hopefully have learned from them, and I'm hoping that they'll share information today that can help us avoid those embarrassing mistakes as founders and startups. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our star-studded panel. All right, we have Nick Williams first. Welcome, Nick. So Nick is a business reporter for the Star Tribune. Nick joined the Star Tribune in March 2021 to lead its startup and small business coverage. Prior to the Star Tribune, Nick spent 5 years at American City Business Journals, covering tech, startups, manufacturing, real estate, and investment deals. Nick was also a sports writer for 12 years, working in New York and Florida. Thanks, Nick, for coming today. Tiffany Jackson. Hi, Tiffany. Tiffany is the VP of Public Relations at Lola Red in Minneapolis and oversees the agency's media relations, crisis communications, influencer marketing, and social media services. Her passion for finding stories that build awareness and engagement for brands, promoting industry leadership, and strengthening connections with media and consumers. She's also an expert in helping brands navigate crisis situations. Tiffany has worked across industries including tech, education, CPG, hospitality, and healthcare. Thanks for being with us today, Tiffany. All right, next we have Allison Kaplan. Allison Kaplan is Vice President of Content for MSP Communications Cities Media Group, which includes Twin Cities Business Magazine, where she is also serving as the editor-in-chief. In this dual role, Allie oversees digital content for both TCB and sister publication Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine. She contributes to the overall strategy and new initiatives for the magazines and leads the Twin Cities business editorial team, including print and events. Allie also hosts a TCB podcast about business leadership and innovation called By All Means. Thanks so much for being with us today, Allie. Next, we have Twila Dang. Twila is the CEO and founder of Matriarch Digital Media and a news producer at Minnesota Public Radio. Twila is passionate about creating media content that respects, encourages, understands, and uplifts women, and she created her digital media company to do just that. She combines women-focused content with actionable steps to build community across audio, social media platforms, and live events. Thanks so much for being here today, Twila. And last but certainly not least, Karla Hult. Karla is an Emmy, Edward R. Murrow, and Walter Cronkite award-winning journalist who has worked in 8 different newsrooms throughout the country. Karla reports and anchors for KARE 11, which is the NBC affiliate here in Minneapolis, while also teaching tomorrow's journalists as an adjunct professor at her alma mater, St. Olaf. Karla also recently launched her own company, which is called So Many Goodbyes, which is dedicated to helping families, caregivers, and the long-term care community cope with the cruelty of Alzheimer's. So, needless to say, this is an unbelievable panel that we have assembled here today, a wide range of experience in different forms of media, different background for each of these panelists, and I just could not be more excited. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to Shalisa. I'm not sure if Shalisa's here. She is the executive director of Beta, and she was really instrumental. There she is. Hey, Shalisa. She was really, really instrumental in putting together this incredible group of people that we're so fortunate to be able to learn from today. So with that, I will kick it off with our first question, which is maybe it seems like there's obvious answers to this, but I'm curious to see the perspectives of the panelists. Why is press important for a startup? Nick, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, every person that sees a company's brand as a potential sale or a potential client or customer. So the more eyes you have on that brand, the better. And media companies have a lot of subscribers, a lot of viewers, a lot of watchers. So, and also if you're a smaller, medium-sized company, your marketing, advertising budget, like how much are you dedicating to that as opposed to labor, other stuff. So, if you can't afford a huge marketing budget, a story here or being featured on a TV station is a big deal.
That's absolutely right. How about you, Tiffany? What's your take on why press is important for a startup?
Yeah, I agree with Nick for a lot of things that he said there. It's really important for a startup to get some brand awareness, get people interested in your brand. You're also probably looking for some investors and potentially employees. So getting your name out there, your mission out there, what you're doing and how you're shaking up a marketplace is going to be really important for your long-term goals and maybe even short-term, especially if you're trying to bring on a team as you're growing quickly.
Allie?
I think it legitimizes the business. I mean, it's the awareness, but also there's something, getting an editorial story in a legit mainstream publication. Wow, that's big time, and it makes people look and take you seriously.
I guess I have the perspective of being somebody who is looking for press. I would say I echo all these sentiments, but from the perspective of when you're building something, a lot of the times the money goes directly into building the thing. So while we'd love to have marketing, we would love to have all these great things that surround the brand, sometimes you can't afford that. And press puts you in a unique position to be able to get the kind of exposure that you couldn't buy with your own money. And that can be a true launch pad to get you to the next dollar, the next person, the next opportunity.
All of those perspectives are so beautiful, right? What a panel, and I'm honored to be among you, by the way. I would say ditto to all of that. I would also add that in this day of social media, and I teach college students, and clearly they have access to social media in a way that my industry, in terms of my news broadcast industry, is acutely aware of because, of course, it's resulted in declining viewership and that sort of thing, and that makes our business model a bit challenging. That said, even when you can put it out into the world via social media, there is a sort of credibility that comes when you also have a Star Tribune or an NPR, whatever it might be, that lends itself to that. That additional exposure also is not to be dismissed. It is a platform that, while decreasing, is still highly relevant and very strong in terms of being able to reach an audience that is still extremely loyal to all of those platforms.
I love that. Thanks so much. The next thing that, I've wondered about this with my own business is there's obviously different forms of media. We have podcasts that I know Twila can speak to. We have NPR, also Twila can speak to that. Print magazines, TV. There's so many different ways that or so many different media outlets that you could reach out to. So what are some factors in determining which type of media is best for your company, just to kind of help us prioritize our outreach? And maybe we'll start with Twila this time.
I'm always I straddle this interesting line now because I work in media for a major organization, but I also have a company that is constantly trying to crack the code on what's the best way to get in front of people. I would say in terms of what makes, what goes into that decision making, a lot of it comes down to who is your audience. If I'm making a product or a particular service for, say, the 18 to 20-year-old crowd, or essentially the children that live in my house, they don't care if I make it into the Trib. It's really cool, and they go, somebody's dad said they saw you in the paper, but they don't connect to it. So then I do have to focus more on the socials and maybe the people in the social space that can carry that word further than me. When I'm dealing in building our company from a straight up investor perspective, that audience really puts a lot of stock in traditional media. Mm-hmm. It did mean something to show up in the Star Tribune. It does mean something to have a piece on Care 11 that periodically spirals back up. A couple years ago, I got asked to do an interview for ABC, completely unrelated to the business, and it lit everything up in a very particular fashion. So I think knowing who that audience is you're trying to get to really will help you focus your efforts. You can't really be all things to all people. You have to be strategic in who you're trying to talk to.
Karla, do you have thoughts on?
I do.
Especially now that you founded your own company,
Absolutely. I would also say, and maybe this is somewhat contradictory, I don't think so. I think that they're mutually inclusive, but that you can adjust your pitch depending on who you are pitching. And so, yes, if you have an interview on Care 11, that will look dramatically different from what will appear in the Star Tribune. It does not mean, however, that you can't still tell your story. And that will probably be my answer to some of the other questions as well. It always comes back to storytelling, right? If you have a company that you believe is credible and that the community needs to know about, that's fabulous. Know how to tell your story, because that's what matters most and that's what gets people's interest.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else here?
If you're a product company and it's worth demonstrating how your product moves or operates and it's very visual, maybe you want to start with a video podcast or a TV station, because you could show, in a 2-minute clip. Or if it's, food or a clothing item, maybe it's more picturesque. So you want something in the magazine or print. But what if it's, if you are the company, your personality is the business, then you want to go on radio or do a podcast or something like that. So
That's a great point. And Allie, too, I'm thinking about you with your podcast, with your radio show, and then being in print. Do you feel like you get pitched differently depending on where someone sees their startup fitting?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what Tiffany's going to say about how they advise clients. But yes, one thing that's been a real eye-opener, I would say, given that, I'm an editor of a fairly established magazine, and people generally want to be in print, and of course when something is in print in the magazine, then it also goes online, so you kind of get that double whammy of two audiences. It is amazing how many pitches I get now for By All Means, our podcast, specific to the podcast. And I think the reason for that is a podcast is this just amazing opportunity to talk without being edited, right? I'm looking at Twila. We do edit,
It's
but
true.
it's just, where else are you going to get that kind of length, right? Karla, what's your average segment? Is it, if you get
about a minute and a half.
a minute and a half. So, and I talk to people for, 45 minutes to an hour. So, wow, you can't really buy PR like that. And I think you have to know as a founder what your strengths are. Some people are just, are funny and they're comfortable on the mic and it just makes a great story. Other people, maybe it's about the visuals and you want to pitch it, maybe it's going to look great on a page. And, so you just I think you have to know yourself and your product, like Nick was saying. But yeah, I definitely think you want to tailor the pitch to, which medium, for sure.
That's a really good point about playing to the strength of the founder, whoever might be pitching the story. Is that something you run into, Tiffany?
I felt like Allie just jumped right into my brain, and I was
Sorry.
like, oh, you took my talking point. But it truly is, especially with a startup, sometimes you don't want to be the spokesperson for your brand. You don't feel comfortable being in front of a camera, not even maybe on the radio in front of a microphone. You might be better suited to meet someone like a Nick and sit down and have a thoughtful conversation where it is edited and it's not just your stream of conscious or responding to questions. And I think Nick said this too, it is so important to understand, what is your product? Is it a visual thing? And if it's not, Where does your story better live? What are you trying to tell? Back to Twila too, like, what is your goal with this? What are you trying to achieve? Who is your audience? It can be different depending on and where you're going, and different mediums are gonna get you in front of different people or help you tell that story in a different way. So it's really important to just think like, what am I trying to achieve? Do I wanna be the person to tell this story? And do I have a great visual or not? And kind of base your pitch off that.
I love that. Thank you. This is sort of following up to that question, but what does make a compelling pitch? And maybe we'll start with Allie. I'm guessing you get a lot of pitches from startups and founders. I guess I have two questions here. What makes a compelling startup pitch, and then what makes a compelling founder story pitch? I don't know if there's a difference there or not, but I'd love to hear like what catches your eye.
Honestly, I want the facts. I want to know, this company, what is relevant? Did this company just raise money? Did they just start? Are they based in Minnesota? Like, why am I going to care? Is it new? Is it growing? Like, what? Because I'm always looking for a hook. Whether I'm putting it in print, online, I need some reason. Or if there's not, then that's when maybe you're looking, maybe there's a seasonal catch. Maybe you're not new, but you're releasing a new collection of products, and you could hook on, oh, it's fall, and we do, something pumpkin, or I don't know. You know what I mean? You look for some kind of hook, because that's where our heads are, and so you're helping us along and giving it reason to rise to the top of the pack for sure.
How about you, Nick? I imagine being in that startup space as a business reporter, you get a lot of pitches along these lines. What catches your eye?
I would say from a startup standpoint, it's like I've never heard of that before. Like if a company's product or software or device is doing something I've never heard of before, then it's like, okay, what is this? And then the founder, I think what catches your eye for the founder is like the why they did it. You get some of those pitches like, I've struggled with mental illness for X amount of years, or my parents went through this, my children went through this, my brother went through this, and I did this company because I didn't want anybody else to struggle like that. So like stories like that, like you could tell are going to be good. So that's the one, like I'm like, okay, this person definitely wants to talk because they start off so personal with it.
That's great, and that makes me think of you, Karla, as the founder of your company and having such a personal connection to that. When people pitch you for stories, for Care 11, for example, are you maybe looking for something different than what Allie and Nick might be looking for?
I think so. And for those who don't know, the company, again, is related to Alzheimer's because I lost my dad to Alzheimer's, and I was pretty outspoken in public about our journey, which if you know anyone who's affected by this disease, it's incredibly difficult and it's overwhelming to deal with practically and, of course, emotionally. So that is why I started the company. So yes, that was my why. It was the storytelling, to Nick's point. But I'd say from my perspective and as a reporter, I think following the headlines, being very plugged in and attuned to what is happening big picture in terms of the economy, in terms of the reality that people are experiencing day in and day out, and this goes to Allie's PEG comments, that you need to have a PEG per se. How does this relate to what people are dealing with at home? Does this help them cover the increased grocery costs amid the increasing inflation, or whatever it might be? Having your eye, at least one eye, on what is happening nationally can be hugely beneficial to getting your pitch heard and actually followed up on.
Can I add really quickly? I know a lot of the times when we're talking about these types of pitches, that they're centered in, very specific communities that are like the startup community, the tech community, the founders community. I work a lot with marginalized groups, people of color, women, people who are disabled, and the way that they have to approach their pitch sometimes has to be altered because it doesn't have a natural connection to what is considered the wider audience. So a lot of the times when we're working with people or people are pitching to us, I really am honing in not just on the story that you're telling me, because there is often a compelling piece of this was a struggle for me, this was a thing for me, But there's also this underlying level of understanding that these people don't get that kind of exposure ever. And because they don't get that exposure, I have to do more due diligence to make sure this seems like a product or service that is in the market, but this founder isn't in the market. How do I make sure that I help get that voice of that founder who we would probably not usually hear from in front of people? How can we make sure we give them an opportunity to share that story? It doesn't make them less compelling. It doesn't make them less interesting. It doesn't make the product less wonderful. We have very particular blinders on where we just don't seem to think that more of those voices that look different from us should be platformed. And we have to think about that too.
How have you made inroads in that way? Is it trying to find people at organizations that connect and basically believe what you believe in terms of what a struggle this is, or what, practically speaking, how do you kind of go about that?
I talk a lot about how every person has individual power in their everyday. I'm a producer. I also run a company, which puts me in a unique position to say, I can actually platform people. So if someone's really compelling, I can have them on one of our podcasts, or I can help build them out a podcast. As a producer in the newsroom, when we have our Monday morning meetings, I can pitch things that normally wouldn't get pitched. Every single person has that opportunity, whether you use your dollars in the individual pocket to do that, whether you make a call on behalf of somebody else. We know that in media, a lot of this is whisper network. A guy knows a guy knows a guy that can get you in front of another guy. Use that. Do you know a guy? Do you know somebody that's great and they haven't really gotten a break? That's an email, that's a text, that's a phone call to connect someone. They can make decisions once they're in the room. Sometimes my job is opening a door or trying to get a door open. You walk through it. Anything that happens after that, you made that happen. But it's useless for me to have any kind of influence if I'm not actually using it to help as many people as possible.
I love that.
Before we move on for this topic, as someone that sits on the other side of the computer and is sending the pitch, I think it's really important to remember that this isn't a sales pitch. This isn't an advertisement for your company. You actually have to answer the why. Why does anyone care about this? If you say that you write this email and you're like, God, I sound so good, does it answer why anyone else cares? And if your answer is no, just delete it. Just get rid of it. I know you spent some time on it, but it is so critical because, as they all said, they're looking for the story. They're looking for why does this matter to our viewer, our reader, our subscribers. So you have to make sure that you're hitting that and hit it up front. Tell them why in the first sentence, because chances are no one's reading the rest of your email. They're gonna read the first sentence, maybe the first two, and you have to hook them there. You can't just go on and on and on. They're as busy as you are. So just make sure, answer the why, hit it up front.
Tiffany, I think it'd be really great to hear about, I'm just thinking about the practical pieces of all of this and what you just said, in your first sentence, hit your why. What are some other tips that you could give the audience here in terms of how you structure that outreach email? And then I obviously want to hear from what is like you said, to be on the other side of the computer or the phone, getting that to say hey, this works for me or this doesn't resonate with me. But is there sort of a structure that you generally follow when you're doing kind of that first outreach to a member of the media?
Yeah, as I just mentioned, brevity is going to be key. You got to hit that why right away. It might be a data point. It might be a solution that you're already providing. It might be your unique. And hitting that right up front, giving them a little bit more context. I love a good bullet point because those are easy to skim. And don't be afraid to link out to additional information or put it underneath your signature. There can be more detail in your pitch, but really it's those first 2-3 sentences. That's what you need. That's what your email should entail. Then link out to more. Let them know you're available for more. If they're interested in your story, they will reach out, and they'll typically reach out really quickly. They're great at a good response when they know they have a good story.
Allie, you're nodding.
Yeah, I would add that, for people who can't necessarily afford the services of Tiffany and the Loretta, and hopefully you will get to that point because it's well worth the money. But if you can't, I think sometimes people get paralyzed feeling like they need to be super clever in a press release, like they need to write a catchy head. And it's that's what we do. We don't need that. I don't need you to be, cutesy and clever. I need to know why I care, who you are, what the story is. And so bullet points, facts, knowing that photos are available, really practical practical stuff. That's the stuff that I need. Here's my one tip. This is like the most boring and practical thing, but man, it's just amazing how many people mess this up. Don't send reporters 10 megabyte files of your products, okay? Say that they're available, put them in a Dropbox, make it easily accessible, or send a low res. But here's what happens. My inbox is always like this far away from being shut down. The help desk hates me, and I'm constantly begging for more space. And sometimes when I'm like in a hurry, if there is one of those big files, I just have to hit delete. And you don't want that to be your file. You don't want that to be your email just because you sent this big photo. So have them available. Every story that's going to go on one of our websites, even if it's a podcast, we need a photo to go with the description. Make sure you have those assets, but just, let them link it out.
Link it out. There's your bullet point.
Can I add a quick?
Yes.
So there's two things. One, and this is going to sound silly because I'm somebody's mama, use your manners. I hate getting solicitations where people think, oh, well, of course you want to deal with me. Well, I'm giving you an opportunity to deal with me. Sir, I don't know your name. You can say hello. You can talk to me nice, or don't talk to me at all. Secondly, solve a problem, and this is twofold. If you have a product or service that solves a problem, detail that quickly. But often when we started our company, we were pitching to like morning shows and afternoon shows and people that needed to fill content holes in their schedule. So we pitched the service, and then we did 3 bullet points of, you could do a segment about this, this, or this. And we had it timed out because we would watch the segment. So we would go, we could do 2 minutes on this, we can do 3 minutes on this. All of a sudden, we were getting callbacks because we were solving 2 problems for them. 1, there's a product or service, and 2, you just helped me do my job today. It was a risk. And again, we talked to them really nice. But it did work. It allowed some of our hosts to get in places where they could talk to the public, get to be known a little bit, and then people would try our content.
That is brilliant. I love that. Karla.
Yeah, I think doing your homework too, knowing the reporters that are actually interested in your topic, I think that is critical because it is not one size fits all. And there are some people who have proven success of covering particular issues or stories, and others who just simply don't have a track record of it at all. So do your homework on that, and then keep it short to those points. And yeah, don't worry about being overly glossy. Keep an eye on the PEG. The PEG is critical too. If you're dealing with deadlines, reporter, that's the essence of how we operate. And so cutting to the chase immediately and keeping it relevant to what is happening and what the conversation is. If you aren't talking about it within your community, outside of your friends and family who care about your current endeavors, then chances are we may not be talking about it either. So keep your eye on what will make it relevant.
Mm-hmm. Nick, what do those great emails look like to you?
The ones that are just quick, like, hey, Nick, can we get coffee some day this week if you're free? Here's a link to my company. Let me know. That is enough. Like the whole, did you know that every year 10,000 whatever's is like those? I'm just like, I know, but like I don't have time for that. Like I have so much rattling around in my brain already. Like that, I don't need that. But just a quick, hey man, saw you reporter. You cover tech, whatever. I got a tech company. You want to talk? Here's my iCalendar thing, book a date. Like, that stuff is like, all right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Nick out here doing free coffees.
I was going to say, how many coffees are you having a week, Nick?
I don't even drink coffee, so like they're drinking coffee, I'm just sitting there listening like, okay. And then, yeah.
So Nick wants beer. That's what he just told all of you. Take note.
This is another practical question. What do email subject lines look like? I struggle with that, knowing like introducing Quill Cue, or I just never am sure what should be in that subject line. So I'd love any advice on that.
Wow.
Coffee for you, right? Coffee, question mark?
Not coffee, just, I don't even know. Like, that's a good question because, the amount of emails, I'm sure, Allie so many emails come in a day, Karla too. Like, so just that, maybe put my name in there. Or, hey, Star Tribune, such and such and such. Something like that's like personalized. Like the ones that literally they've been copied and pasted and sent to every single media outlet in the state. You can almost tell immediately, like, okay, this has gone everywhere. Mm-hmm. I'll pass over it.
Yeah.
I'm just
Tiffany,
used to-
what do you
You know,
recommend?
I wish I had a consistent pattern. I switch it up, especially as you get to know a journalist. I know Karla had mentioned, like, get to know who you're reaching out to, and kind of learn their style a little bit, see what they're interested in. You know, some people go for the all caps method. I feel like that's a little aggressive. I don't know if I would like love that coming into
all
my
caps people all the time.
my all caps. It's a thing, but I think it's like letter case. I find to work the best. And again, it's short. It's like startup raises $3 trillion. Someone would open that. You know, like it kind of short to the point. A lot of times I don't include a brand name necessarily unless it's a recognizable brand name. That's probably not going to get the hook that you're looking for, but it kind of gets back to that, like, what is your why? What are you solving right away? Or what is your story to share? But keep it relatively short. You know, you get 1 million marketing emails a day from every company. Wayfair, if you're on those, you get like 17 a day and you can never, ever unsubscribe. You ignore those, right? Look at what they're doing. They are designed to make you open them and you still are ignoring them. So if your headline looks like a Wayfair email, just cut it out. Cut it out.
Yeah, I would just say practical is better. You know, I mean, if you know, St. Paul startup, you need to know, or you know, exactly raises money. If there's just a quick little, I'd rather have information than you know, something cutesy or you know
Emojis.
I don't need an emoji in an email. No, I don't. I don't mind it, but I don't need it.
I'm a cheater. I do the shouty capitals occasionally. I do. People get me all the time with really silly things like the subject line will be like, "Wow," with an exclamation point. And I'm like, "What is this?" And then I'll open it and it'll be like,
Shiny object.
Exactly. They'll be like, "Wow, I can't believe you opened this email." I'm like, "Got me." I'm like, respect. I'll read it just because you put that there. But I do like it when people are really clear about what they want. I really actually don't mind if the subject line is a sentence that's like, "Twila thought this be of interest to you," and then like ... whatever the thing is, because it kind of helps me like keep a click without having to make another. Like I have bad wrist. I don't keep clicking on everything. So even some of that kind of stuff with specificity, I actually really appreciate that.
I think emphasizing the why, again, as Nick first pointed out, I think that that's so important. And if you can encapsulate within a few words, awesome. So Minneapolis dad turns tragedy into booming business, boom. Right? Suddenly, as a reporter, needing to pitch stories, I'll probably pitch whatever is within the body of that email. So recognizing that you have that captive audience who has her own pitches and deadlines to meet, if you can link us in and hook us in right with that subject line with the why, that would really be beneficial. I will just add one little detail. This does not relate to subject line, but if you are a PR person or your contact information includes a zip code that is definitely not in this area, that is usually discouraging to me because I'm probably not going to call someone who's located in New York for a local NBC affiliate, right? And I think that's true for most of us who are trying to serve our local community because even though we have our eye on what's happening beyond the borders, we hope our community always does, we are still also striving to show how it relates to people here in the Minnesota community.
Here's a startup-specific question, and I hope this doesn't undermine anything that Lola Red is doing, but I've heard some different things about whether when you're in the startup mode and you're maybe just the sole founder and you know you don't have this big company and you likely don't have a PR agency engaged, but maybe you do have a PR person. Is there, when it comes to the startup world, would you rather hear from the founder directly in terms of outreach, or do you prefer to hear from a PR, you know, either agency or professional when getting pitched a story? Yeah, go ahead.
I would say the founder, especially if it's like a fairly new company. The likelihood that that PR person knows your story better than you is not going to happen. Like, you've been working on this for how many months, years, like you have all this inside you're waiting to get out, you do it, you know, because that first conversation, most of the time, like that founder just goes all out and tells me everything. You know, 10 years ago I did this, and just keep going. I'm like, okay, we're just talking for the first time. So I would say, and plus, like from a money standpoint, like I've talked to some founders who like they paid X amount of money to have a commercial made. It is just a YouTube commercial, or they paid X amount to have a press release written for them. And I was like, why'd you spend that much money on that? You know, you could have just called me or called one of us and save that, save that money.
Yeah, Tiffany, I know. Maybe you don't want to answer this question. Or, like, do you ever get feedback where it's like, hey, or do you ever, I guess, put the founder directly in touch with whatever contact that you have for some kind of a strategic reason?
Absolutely. And I think maybe Allie said this Twila said it. Like, each dollar you make is so important. Every dollar needs to go into investing in your business. So go out there, tell your story, listen to these tips, right? You don't need a full press release. You need an email and get some time with a reporter to tell your story, especially when you're starting up. You don't need the PR agency. You need to just put your feet on the ground and start running. So while I would love to be a part of your story and help you share it, it probably doesn't make sense until you're a few years down the road, you see that money in the bank and you're ready to invest, and you're looking for more resources, you're looking for some more support, your team is strapped, and you have the dollars then to put into a really solid partnership that can help you bring you to that next level, that next client, that next opportunity.
I'll give you a really good example of why the founders, and especially at the beginning, is the best. There's a woman in the Twin Cities, her name's Anila, she runs a company called Habit Aware. And she's amazing. And in the first 2 years of that business, anytime you saw Anila in public and she told her story, the entire room was in tears. In tears. She developed an application that helps people with habitual behaviors control those behaviors. It's transformational what she's doing. And you think it sounds cool when you see it in paper and you're reading about it, but it just tears you, it just rips your guts out when she tells you her story. Every single founder has something like that. Every single founder has something that they're so into it. They love it so much. They care about it so much. It matters so much to them for whatever reason. That's going to get you 20 times further than the press release, than the carefully worded statement, than the email. Get yourself in front of as many people as possible and talk to them about what you do. It will snowball. I started a business in my basement, literally in my basement. And that is not what got me in front of people and got me in the Star Tribune and got me in other places. What happened was anytime somebody said, hey, do you want to talk about what you do? Or hey, we need somebody to talk about this particular thing. I would go, I'm here, I can show up, I can talk to you. Because I knew I had one thing on my side. I knew my story, I knew why I'm here, I knew why I cared about it. I could tell you, you might not, but you at least have the option to hear me out and then make decisions for yourself. And if I kept saying it and kept saying it and kept saying it, it kept growing in resonance. As a founder, you can create that all on your own with the words that come out of your mouth. That's a valuable, valuable tool. Don't underestimate it.
Yeah, I would just add that I think there might be this impression that you need to package it up and have an agency to look legit. We don't care. We're all about the story. We need to know the facts, but we're really looking for the stories, and nobody has more powerful stories, to Twila's point, than entrepreneurs. It's made for it. You all have a story about why you're doing this. Other businesses are grasping for that. But with an entrepreneur, that's why there are so many podcasts about the entrepreneurial journey. The stories are amazing. So lead with that. Get it out there. We're not hard to find. I mean, our email addresses and social media handles are plastered everywhere, so reach out. I think I'll give a plug to what Tiffany does. I think when you reach that point where you're like, your head is exploding and you're trying to figure out what about your business to outsource, that's when you ask yourself, am I really good at this? Is this super easy for me to just talk to the press and keep doing it? Or is that the thing that is just freaking me out and putting me over the edge? And that's when you get help and you utilize their contacts and you let them help you. Not that, some of my best friends are in PR, and the good publicists, when you find one, they know how to get to us too. They know the kind of stories that we like and what we're looking for. I will always open those pitches as well, but I'm happy to just hear directly from you. I don't need a logo on it. I don't need it to be a fancy press release.
Karla, do you have thoughts on this? I'm thinking one thing that I heard once, at least when it came to television, was sometimes they prefer to hear from a PR professional because then that professional can sort of vouch for their client, like this person will do okay on TV, you know? So I don't know if maybe you have a different perspective on that since it's a different medium.
The coaching can be absolutely worth it. But that said, we would obviously always prefer the person who's behind the business. I will say that as I'm listening, I have nothing but empathy for people who are thinking to themselves, well, I am the founder. This is a personal passion. This is a reflection of my life, and therefore I can only be the messenger of it, which is what I personally struggle with. I have empathy and sympathy, and I know how challenging it is. At some point, you can have enough control of your message that you can feel comfortable outsourcing it perhaps and giving a template of sorts. But it is hard. It's an act of trust. So again, I will say the struggle is real. And so I think that invitations that you're hearing to be a little less glossy, to be a little more casual, but just to always keep sincerity and authenticity at the top is what will be really valuable to you if you're still trying to go it alone and still trying to send your own message. I don't know if I directly answered the TV part of it, but I will say that, yes, it's great for coaching. And if you have even a friend, it doesn't have to necessarily be a PR agency. It's someone who's had interview experience, get advice from them. Because the difference of not having advice and having advice is dramatic. And I will say, even my first interviews, when I sat down with someone who I'd co-hosted with many times, Belinda Jensen, and she interviewed me about my company, dramatic difference. I'm like, that was 4 minutes? Like, are you kidding me? I didn't even get to what I needed to. So it is true that you would benefit from some kind of advice ahead of time.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure it's interesting to be on both sides of that. Yeah. Another practical question is, what amount of follow-up is appropriate versus inappropriate? So I've had this come up where I'm like, gonna send a follow-up email, but you kind of don't know, should it just be one follow-up email, two? What's sort of the line for each of you?
I'm like, business
So
folks first.
from the PR company, I would say after the second one, if I didn't respond to the second one, just move on.
Okay.
From the founder, I would say the third, because it's your company, like you're driving for it. I understand. And after that, it's like, okay, maybe he's just, I didn't approach him the right way. I'll try a different a different platform, really. Like if the email didn't work, just try, LinkedIn or leave a voicemail. Like 3 emails in a row, it probably doesn't work. Like email, then maybe a voicemail or something like that.
That's good advice. Tiffany?
I actually agree. I will send one follow-up email. It gets buried. Things get buried in email all the time. If you know it's the right reporter and that your story is a story that they would be interested in, send a follow-up. I actually love Twitter. Journalists use Twitter all the time. So oftentimes I'll follow them on Twitter before I send the follow-up. So they might have a recognition like, oh, I've seen that name somewhere else before. Now it's in my inbox. I find that to be a really valuable tool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, 2 or 3 I'm good with because things do get buried and you do forget. And so that reminder, it feels okay. And I'm not offended even if it's something I'm not going to use. And don't take it personally if you don't hear back. Chances are it's just, it wasn't right for that day or that week or that issue. It's not necessarily personal. So I think it's okay to follow up. And I think after that, I would even say, maybe you switch it up a little bit, and maybe a month later there's a reminder of something else that your product could tie into that you didn't bring up the first time. Find a new angle, and maybe that's the thing, because maybe it's interesting, but it just doesn't fit into what we're doing for that particular issue or that moment. But a month later, when suddenly we're doing a big feature on med tech and you've got this new software platform, wow, now this is relevant.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that. You said like 2 to 3 and like maybe vary it up. How much time in between those?
I say all within a month, because then I remember. If it's like 6 months later, hey, do you remember that email?
That's thousands
I
of
think-
emails
Then the
later.
clock resets. Then you
I
go
would say,
back
like,
to the first one again.
In the same month, first 6 weeks at least.
I just wanted to tag on to what Ali said too. It goes back to being relevant, right? So if you're following the national conversation and if all of a sudden your pitch is once again timely, go ahead, revisit. And that might mean that it's the fourth time that you're reaching out. But if suddenly it makes sense that it's within the conversation, it's within what we are covering in the news. Perhaps it's related to racial reckoning. Perhaps it's related to, again, inflation. Whatever it might be, this ongoing issue that we need to keep our eyes on. If you have something that's directly relevant, go ahead and try again.
What do you think about well, I guess, what's your preference for type of outreach, email versus DMs versus a LinkedIn message? And then do you like when people vary it? Like they might send you an email and then, you know, like later they DM you in the week, or I don't know, like are there any thoughts around, no, I really prefer email, like that's where I keep track of kind of all the incoming pitches. Allie, do you have thoughts on that?
Email.
Okay.
And generally, I mean, I just have too many inboxes, and I'll forget where I saw it, and it'll get lost. I don't mind. I mean, you know, I'll have people hitting me up on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and I'll generally just give them my email address and say, put it there, because then I can keep track of it and search for it.
Please don't send the same message to a bunch of different places that reach me. That is problematic. If you an email, I don't always have my email freely available. I'm okay with that. But usually my DMs are open on socials if you're really trying to find me and connect to me. You just do it in one place. Don't send me a Twitter and then send me an Instagram and then go to Facebook, which I don't use that. Don't.
You're too cool for that.
I mean, I started it like years ago, so I don't really actually ever. I always feel bad when once a year I check those DMs over there, and it's like this was from 1998. What is this? But I mean, if you're clear with me one time and you say when to reach out, 9 times out of 10, unless it's just not in my purview, I will do exactly like Ali said. I'll send you an email. Say, send an email. Give me some information. But if you bombard all the things thinking she'll see it somewhere, what you've actually done is create an annoyance in my day, and now we're not talking. Not because you don't have a great product, but because you have now gotten on my nerves. And I can't usually move past that as quickly as I probably should.
Karla, what's your...
I think email. I mean, I think the DMs are great if you have that relationship and I'm following you and whatever else, but I think email is great because that's how we compartmentalize our lives, those of us who have businesses and are also reporting, and it just is helpful to have everything in one place. It keeps it really organized.
How about you, Nick?
I would say LinkedIn's been working better for me because once I get like that invitation or a note, I can see how many shared connections we have. I'm like, oh, wow, me and this person share like 70 people. Okay, this person knows this and this. I know who that person is, so this person must be legit. So that's
a really good point. Yeah, I like that kind of social proof. All right, we just have a couple minutes left. So I wanted to just go down the panel and ask, are there any other do's or don'ts when it comes to media and PR that we have not talked about or that you want to share with the group? Go ahead, yeah.
I think one thing that, because I cover startups, like somebody who's coming out of an accelerator, and that accelerator, sends out an email telling the media like, this is our new cohort. Make sure if you're an accelerator that you're on that list, or if not, just ask them to vouch for you and say, hey, can you reach out to the media for me, like Generator, Y Combinator, whoever it is, whatever accelerator you're in, let that accelerator push you out. I mean, that's what you joined for. And that gives validation to you. I would say that's a tip for all the startups out there.
That's a great tip. I've never thought of that. That's awesome.
So my tip is actually, you have the interview, you got the segment placed or the article written, share it. Share it on your social media, share it with your friends, watch it yourself, share it far and wide. Media is also a business. They're in the same boat you are. They are looking for more subscribers, new readers, new audiences to reach as well. You can help them. It shows that you're really proud of it too, and starts to build that really good working relationship so that you go back to that reporter again when you have another story to tell, or they have a story where they need a resource and they're coming to you. But keep sharing it, be proud of what you have accomplished, and engage with the media platforms too on social. It is incredibly important right now to engage in the social space. I think Karla had mentioned, like not as many people are watching the TV news, but they are watching them on social media.
Good advice. I would say I'll give two quickies. Number one, do your homework about the people you're reaching out to. We're egomaniacs, reporters, and we think that you're reading and watching and listening to everything we do because it's all amazing. So I just when you get a pitch that is just so like tone deaf, it's like, you know, about something that you wrote about last week, or you don't even realize that you were actually mentioned in that roundup story about the accelerator. just know, you know, what's been written, know what that reporter has done. If you can find a way to be relevant and build off of something that the publication or, you know, or media outlet has recently covered, that's all good. And just make sure that you don't, you know, make a major gaffe like not knowing, you know. That would be number one. Another one that I wanted to just mention, this is probably a little different for magazines than it is for the other media, but on our website, on tcbmag.com, we actually have an editorial content calendar. It's kind of crazy. Magazines plan further ahead, obviously. Our deadlines are months out. And so it's not everything that we're doing, certainly, but it can give you a little bit of a roadmap to what's coming. And that's true for any magazine. And so when you're thinking, gosh, where could I fit in? You know, what would be the right time? When is the next issue of Start MN, which is, you know, comes out twice a year from us and is specifically about startups? When are we doing a focus on, you know, food and beverage, and you're in that space, or health tech, or whatever it is? It just can give you a few clues. That's what I'm sure you probably are aware of that, right? That's what the professionals are going to use, and so that can help you as far as, you know, tailoring your message and timing.
Two quick things. One, simplify your message. Simplify your messaging. If you can explain it to your 70-year-old mom or your 4-year-old and they understand it, you got it. Otherwise, it's too complicated. Bring it back down. The second, please remember and always operate as though nobody knows who you are. Do not start thinking, oh, I've got a low resonance, somebody published me. Obviously, you know what I am. Your daily job is to introduce your business to someone new and say, hi, this is my name, this is what I built, and this is why I think it would be helpful to you. That's a daily conversation, whether you're in business 1 day or 7,000 days. It never stops. You are always introducing yourself to new people. Act like you are introducing yourself every single day.
The elevator speech, right? Fabulous. And I would just add that relationships matter. Following up on those original emails and messaging, that matters. And I would also suggest storytelling. And I think that in this noisy world in which we operate, when everyone is so distracted by everything, that a compelling story will always do you justice and probably get read, and therefore get the response that you're hoping for.
Wow, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much to our panelists. This was a dream come true for me to get to ask all of you these questions and get such valuable information. I hope you all have a great rest of your night, and thanks again for coming.
Yeah.